Welcome in to the Tuesday edition of the Fun Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller, thanks so much for joining us. We're going to get into what we talked about yesterday, this retrograde review. What a good thing to do on retrograde, but review what's in retrograde. Really light chart today. The only thing that happens significantly is the moon leaves Taurus and goes into Gemini at 4:05 this afternoon Eastern Time. But we do have a YOD in the chart. Up at the top of the witch's hat would be the south node of the moon. This one's not going to go anywhere for a while because at the base are Neptune and Uranus. Think of an elongated pyramid, right? It's a tall witch's hat. And we'll get to Neptune and Uranus at the base because that is significant, especially when we talk about them in retrograde. But this is a karmic YOD. It's a releasing YOD. And the nodes are still in that square to Pluto. Now, orbs get interesting on this. A lot of people keep a pretty tight orb on sextiles, like 2, sometimes 3 degrees. I don't know, fun astrology style, I would let this one breathe a little bit. I think we have a player here. You have slow-moving planets in retrograde at the base. The question is, how far do we have to move that south node from 25 degrees, where it is now, before it becomes irrelevant? I think it's going to be a little bit. Your charting software may not pick up on it, but I think it is definitely there in the energy, and that's going to be at least through the end of the rest of this year into the first of next. It just popped in today. And think about the structure of a YOD. It's the 2 base planets thrusting their energy up to the top planet. So this is so this is Neptune and Uranus, surprises. And the south node, of course, is that buried karma. So especially I'm thinking from the collective. At least this is on the Libra releasing side and not on the north node Aries conflict and war side. But it is that axis of the nodes. But I wouldn't be surprised over this time period with this YOD in there as a fated object, like things are going to happen under this. It just continues to stack in and fit with all these other things, including right in the middle of this YOD will be the upcoming eclipses. We talked about those last week. Aren't you glad you put your daily weather hat on? Because this one, it's, the thing that I'm a little bit concerned for myself is as it moves off the chart, and we're kind of studying in the future as what's there today, well, it's still going to be there. And I hope I can remember that because this one's one not to forget about. All right, let's do our little retrograde review. And I'm not going to rush through this. We have some clear days this week. In fact, we could take 3 days, 4 days on this and be just fine. It won't take that long, but boy, have you seen this stuff around Burning Man? Well, that's in here, so let's talk about this. First of all, I mapped out from start to Pluto, Mercury to Pluto, what the retrograde patterns are. This is an interesting thing to keep in mind in context. So let's start at the sun and work our way out. Mercury, with its 88-day orbit around the sun, goes into retrograde 3 to 4 times per year, and typically for a duration of about 3 weeks. If you want to see the path of that and how that happens, there are scads of articles online for all of these. All right, then Mars, with its 2-year orbit, goes into retrograde every about 26 months, just a tick over 2 years, for 2.5 months. Now, the one that just ended, Venus, goes retrograde about every 18 months for, just as we experienced, 6 weeks. Now we turn to Jupiter, and there's a clear pattern here. Jupiter, every 13 months, so just about a year, for 4 months. Next one out, Saturn, every year, 4.5 months. Next one out, Chiron, every year, 5 months. Next one out, Uranus, every year, 5 months. Neptune, every year, 5 to 6 months. And Pluto, every year, for 5 to 6 months. We really don't stop to think that at least Chiron, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are nearly in retrograde half the time. You look at your chart and you say, that's why I've got these retrograde planets. Jupiter and Saturn only direct 60% of the time. This is all so amplified right now because we have so much of this going on and that we're feeling it, we're experiencing it, we're connected to it. But when you take a step back and zoom out, it's quite a bit of time that these planets are not in direct motion. maybe the benevolence of the designer knew that we would blow ourselves up if these planets were in forward motion all the time. We want to go, go, go. And the system of nature, the sky above us, is saying, take a break. And these big theme builders, it's the triggers that go longer in between retrograde periods. It's these theme builders that are saying it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now, like I said, I'm glad we have time to let this expand, because we will, and we'll start with Pluto here, and then we'll stop and pick it up with Saturn tomorrow. But if you go to the funastrology.com website, I have the list of retrograde planets. There's a black bar there now that you can click on, and it just takes you to a web page where you can see what's retrograde for what dates. Pluto went into retrograde May 1st. It goes direct October 11th. I've been seeing more signs of the USA Pluto return here. Things have just been more bizarre. And, of course, Pluto isn't just for the United States. I'm not implying that at all. I'm just looking at how has this Pluto retrograde crossing from Aquarius back into Capricorn affected the collective. Obviously, on all of these, you would have to do your own internal work to see how they've affected you. We'll take a more macro perspective here. But think about what's happened. What's the most bizarre thing that's happened since around late spring in the United States, April, May? And I don't like to bring this in, but it is pivotal, and it is all connected to Pluto going back to revisit the United States Pluto original position. The 4th hit by degree, not by degree and minute, but by degree, of Pluto at its original place in the United States chart. And obviously, I think that would have to be the charges that have been filed against the former President Donald Trump. And right there, 50-50, right? The split. Boom, there's the division. There, to me, is the focus of the Pluto return. And so many things, including the eclipses, the election, all of that stuff is ahead. And I don't think that Pluto and its retrograde and its 4th time to hit that degree point and its retracement back into Aquarius have told their final story by any means, nor do you, I'm sure. But as we analyze its retrograde path 2023, that certainly is a big one, is it not? And we'll continue to watch all of that unfold. I am going to talk about Burning Man tomorrow. We'll talk about that because we'll pick up with Saturn, and Saturn opposed the Sun during its retrograde, and it was on that opposition, and Mars at 29 degrees when Burning Man launched this year.